In the misty hills of Appalachia, a tiny fawn named Copper lay near death, abandoned by a fierce storm. Ranger, an aging hound forgotten by time, approached not with hunger, but with unexpected tenderness. When predator becomes protector, nature itself pauses to marvel. This incredible bond ignited hope not only in two fragile creatures, but also in a wounded community and a father's fractured heart. Watch how compassion defies instincts, rewriting destiny in the gentle whispers of Elk Ridge. The air hung thick and heavy over Elk Ridge, a quiet valley nestled deep within the rolling, verdant hills of Tennessee. The afternoon sun, oppressive and relentless, began its gradual retreat behind gathering storm clouds. Elk Ridge was a picturesque slice of Americana, dotted sparsely with rustic cabins and dense, whispering forests that concealed both beauty and secrets within their emerald embrace. But today, its serenity was about to shatter beneath nature's fury. As the horizon darkened, the first distant rumbles of thunder echoed through the valley, sending shivers through the herds of wild deer grazing nervously near the forest's edge. The wind picked up suddenly, rustling leaves into a chaotic symphony, branches bending violently under its invisible hand. The approaching storm, promising both relief from the oppressive heat and the threat of destruction, surged quickly toward Elk Ridge. In the sheltering gloom beneath tall pines, Copper, a young deer barely a few weeks old, trembled against his mother's side. Copper was small and fragile, his slender legs still awkward and uncertain beneath him. His fur was a delicate chestnut color, flecked lightly with white, soft and bright as summer itself. Wide, innocent brown eyes gazed upwards, filled with both curiosity and mounting fear. This was Coppa's first encounter with a storm, and his tiny heart fluttered wildly in his narrow chest. Suddenly, lightning split the sky, illuminating the valley for a blinding instant before plunging it back into darkness. The herd bolted, panic igniting like wildfire among them. In the chaos, Copper desperately tried to keep pace with his mother's swift movements, but his gangly limbs betrayed him. He stumbled, falling onto the wet, uneven forest floor. By the time he raised his head, the herd was gone, their thundering hooves fading swiftly into the distance. Copper, now utterly alone, whimpered softly into the empty darkness, struggling upright only to find himself lost and abandoned amidst the storm's fury. Elsewhere, near an isolated clearing on the opposite side of Elk Ridge, Ranger plodded slowly along an overgrown trail. Ranger was an old hound, a mix of bloodhound and blue-tick coonhound, whose muzzle was heavily grizzled with gray and white hairs. He once had been robust and muscular, a proud hunting dog famed throughout the valley for his keen sense of smell and tireless loyalty. Now age and loneliness had diminished his strength, dimmed his eyesight, and slowed his steps. Ranger's brown eyes, once bright with youthful eagerness, now gazed out with tired resignation. His ears drooped low, and his coat, mottled dark blue-black and tan, bore patches thin from neglect. The dog had belonged to old Jack Martin, a solitary old hunter known for his silent wisdom and gentle spirit. Jack's recent death had left Ranger adrift, forgotten and alone, left to roam the Appalachian forests he once considered home. The rain began falling in earnest, quickly drenching the world in curtains of icy water. Ranger plodded forward, driven only by instinct and vague memory. Then, abruptly, a new scent reached his sensitive nose, sharp, fearful, distinctly vulnerable. Ranger paused, ears perking despite himself. Something drew him forward, tugging at his weary heart. In a clearing beneath a twisted oak, Ranger found Copper, curled and shivering, nearly hidden by tall, soaking grass. The fawn's sides heaved rapidly, his breath shallow and terrified. Ranger approached slowly, cautiously, each paw landing gently upon the sodden earth. Coppa's large eyes widened further with fear at the approach of this unknown creature, his small body tensed, awaiting a final strike from an unseen predator. But Ranger simply stopped, standing quietly a few feet away, studying the tiny fawn. There was something in those frightened eyes, a helplessness that stirred something deep and long forgotten within Ranger's tired old heart. The hound lay down slowly, settling into the grass, offering no threat. Copper blinked in bewilderment, confusion replacing terror as he watched the strange animal now guarding him from the darkness. Across the valley, at the edge of the forest, a small cabin stood solitary beneath a canopy of thick, dripping branches. Ben Hartwell sat on his porch, his strong, calloused hands gripping a mug of steaming coffee, staring pensively into the tempest raging around him. Ben was a former park ranger, once a respected figure throughout the Appalachians. Now nearing 60, Ben was still broad-shouldered and sturdy, but the years had etched deep lines into his weathered face. His once thick black hair was now more silver than dark, combed loosely away from a face marked by regret. Ben's eyes, a striking shade of pale blue, were shadowed with sadness, haunted by ghosts of the past he refused to let go. A devastating accident years before, one he blamed solely upon himself, had driven Ben into isolation, away from people and even from the forest he had loved and protected. The storm calmed slightly, turning into a gentle but persistent drizzle. Feeling an instinctive call to duty that had never truly left him, Ben rose, pulled on a weathered raincoat and boots, and stepped into the storm-washed woods. He knew animals would be displaced and in danger. It was his silent responsibility to ensure the forest was safe, even if he felt unworthy of protecting it. Navigating familiar trails that now lay partially obscured, Ben moved with slow deliberation, reading signs left by fleeing wildlife, silently assessing the storm's damage. He paused at a muddy clearing, eyes narrowed, spotting delicate hoof prints that indicated a young deer, isolated and disoriented. But beside them, he saw larger paw prints, clearly canine, their pattern hesitant yet purposeful. Ben crouched, fingertips tracing the tracks carefully. Memories stirred. Echoes of another loyal companion he had once lost filled his heart with a sharp pang. Ben glanced up, the old ranger's instincts urging him to follow. But something in the manner of these tracks, calm, deliberate, gave him pause. There was no scent of violence or fear here, merely two animals who seemed to have encountered each other and moved on together. Ben hesitated, rising slowly, a sense of quiet respect overcoming the urgency to intervene immediately. Perhaps this story unfolding in the shadows was not his alone to finish. Returning toward his cabin, Ben felt an odd, hopeful warmth growing in his chest, softening the edges of his long-held grief. He resolved to return the next morning to check again on those unusual companions, believing somehow they might find their own way through this darkness together. Meanwhile, beneath the sheltering branches of the old oak, Kappa's trembling slowly ceased. Ranger remained faithfully beside him, eyes scanning the shadows carefully. The fawn felt a warmth he had feared lost, and Ranger rediscovered something he'd believed forever gone, the purpose of loyalty and companionship. The storm eventually passed, leaving the valley wrapped in a serene quiet. Stars peeked through the retreating clouds, casting silvery light upon Ranger and Copper. Each, though vastly different in form and nature, shared an instinctive knowledge that from now on, neither would face the night alone. Morning in Elk Ridge broke gently, washing away the lingering remnants of the fierce summer storm. Dewdrops sparkled in the early sunlight, clinging tenderly to the leaves and blades of grass. The air was fresh and cool, a quiet peace settling over the valley once more. Beneath the wide branches of the old oak tree, Ranger slowly opened his eyes, blinking against the rising sun. The old dog lifted his gray muzzle cautiously, joints stiff and aching from the cold, damp night. He glanced sideways toward the tiny form beside him. Copper still curled into a small ball, breathing softly. The fawn was alive, but fragile and trembling, his delicate ribs rising and falling visibly beneath his dusty chestnut fur. Ranger's heart tightened with unfamiliar tenderness. He understood that Copper needed water urgently, or he would fade away beneath the indifferent beauty of the summer morning. Heaving himself to his feet, Ranger sniffed the air carefully, searching for moisture. The scent of fresh rain still lingered, and the old dog's sensitive nose quickly located small puddles of rainwater cupped gently by fallen leaves nearby. Ranger limped slowly to the leaves, dipping his tongue into the shallow pools, tasting carefully. Satisfied, he gently lifted one large leaf between his teeth, careful not to spill its precious contents, and returned to the weakened fawn. Ranger tilted the leaf carefully, allowing droplets to trickle onto Copper's dry, cracked lips. Copper stirred slightly, tongue flickering out weakly, instinctively drinking the drops Ranger offered. Encouraged by this small victory, Ranger repeated his cautious journey several more times, each leafful of rainwater gradually restoring a fragile glimmer of strength to the exhausted deer. Finally, when Copper seemed unable to take any more, Ranger settled carefully beside him again. The old dog's warm body pressed close, providing comfort and safety, silently pledging his guardianship. Unbeknownst to both animals, a figure stood motionless among the trees, observing quietly. Ben Hartwell had returned at dawn, compelled by the mysterious tracks he'd discovered the previous evening. The former ranger moved silently, his skills sharp despite years away from active duty. His broad shoulders hunched slightly beneath a worn plaid jacket, silver-streaked hair tousled, pale blue eyes narrowed in careful observation. Watching the old hound's deliberate actions, Ben felt a deep stirring within himself, a memory surfacing from the shadows of his heart. He had once known a dog like Ranger, a loyal companion named Duke, sturdy, fierce, and endlessly faithful. Duke had been Ben's partner in his ranger duties, guiding him tirelessly through these forests, until a tragic accident ended the dog's life and shattered Ben's confidence. Seeing Ranger's gentle persistence, Ben was flooded with bittersweet memories of Duke's unwavering courage and companionship. Lost in thought, Ben moved quietly closer to better see the pair, careful not to alarm them. As he neared, he noticed how Ranger gently placed himself protectively around the fawn, as if sensing danger nearby. Ben hesitated, torn between stepping in to offer help and allowing nature its delicate balance. A sudden noise interrupted his contemplation, a sharp snap of twigs underfoot. Ben spun around swiftly, instincts alert. Emerging from the dense underbrush was Emily Hartwell, Ben's daughter. Emily, 29 years old, was slender and strong, her bright auburn hair falling loosely to her shoulders, framing a face marked by fierce determination yet softened by deep compassion. Her clear green eyes reflected surprise at encountering her father unexpectedly in these woods. Emily had left Elk Ridge years ago, moving to Nashville to work as a wildlife rehabilitator. The painful distance that had grown between father and daughter since the accident remained unspoken but heavy. Returning home, even briefly, always seemed to reopen old wounds. "Dad," Emily whispered, cautious and hesitant. "What are you doing out here so early?" Ben sighed, forcing down his surprise, voice low. "There's something special going on here, Em. Look." He nodded toward Ranger and Copper. Emily turned, watching the scene silently, her eyes widening slightly in astonishment. As a professional rehabilitator, she had seen unlikely animal friendships before, but something about this felt unique, poignant even. "That dog looks just like Duke," Emily murmured softly, carefully stepping closer to her father. "He does," Ben agreed quietly, voice tinged with a sadness he couldn't quite conceal. Same breed, same stubborn loyalty. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft rustling of leaves overhead and the gentle breathing of Ranger and Copper. Emily finally broke it, glancing toward her father thoughtfully. Maybe this is a sign, Dad. A second chance, somehow. For all of us." Ben hesitated, chest tightening, the familiar ache of old regret rising to the surface. He wanted desperately to believe his daughter, but years of isolation had built a thick wall around his heart. Still, he nodded slowly, unwilling to dismiss the hope he saw shining brightly in Emily's earnest eyes. "Maybe," he whispered, turning back to the animals. "But let's watch them first. See how things unfold naturally." Emily nodded, understanding her father's caution, and stepped quietly beside him, their silent observation forming a tentative bridge over past hurts. As the sun climbed steadily higher, bathing the forest in warmth, Kappa's breathing gradually steadied, strength returning bit by bit to his slender body. Ranger watched carefully, instincts sharp despite his age. He remained alert, acutely aware of every shift in the breeze, every distant rustle. As Emily and Ben observed silently from their hidden vantage, another sound broke the quiet, a sudden, distant barking, aggressive and harsh, carried faintly by the wind. Ranger immediately lifted his head, ears alert. Copper whimpered softly, sensing danger, pressing himself more closely against Ranger's protective form. Ben stiffened, eyes narrowing. "Coyotes," he muttered, voice tense. "They've been getting bolder lately." Emily glanced nervously toward Ranger and Copper. "Will they be safe?" she asked softly. Ben hesitated briefly before answering. "For now, yes. That old dog knows what he's doing, but we should stay close." He knew the forest intimately, understanding that their presence might deter predators simply by scent and sound. Ranger seemed to understand this too, his posture visibly relaxing once the distant barks faded again. He turned his tired eyes briefly toward the human's hiding spot, sensing their presence but strangely reassured rather than alarmed. He shifted position, placing his body even more deliberately around Copper, silently vowing to remain vigilant through whatever danger might come. Ben observed Ranger's protective behavior with quiet admiration, a subtle yet powerful lesson unfolding before him, a reminder of the strength that loyalty and compassion could inspire, even in the most unlikely places. Beside him, Emily seemed to sense the same message, her eyes glistening slightly with emotion. Father and daughter shared another brief glance, an unspoken agreement forming between them. Perhaps they both silently hoped healing might indeed be possible, not just for Ranger and Copper, but for them as well. As the sunlight filtered warmly through the trees, bathing Elk Ridge in golden hues, the unlikely guardianship forged beneath the old oak continued, quietly watched over by two humans beginning, cautiously, to rediscover each other. Though danger still lurked on the forest's edge, for this moment at least, peace had settled gently into the valley once more. Night descended softly over Elk Ridge, cloaking the valley in darkness pierced only by faint starlight. A thin veil of mist lingered among the trees, carrying with it a chill that made the air feel heavier, more oppressive. Beneath the broad branches of the ancient oak, Ranger lay curled protectively around Copper, who slept fitfully against his side, warmth radiating between them. The fawn had gained a measure of strength, but remained fragile, his breathing shallow and rapid. Ranger rested his gray muzzle upon his paws, ears twitching at every nocturnal sound. Though exhausted, instinct prevented him from surrendering fully to sleep, for the forest was never completely safe. Nearby, hidden carefully among dense brush, Ben Hartwell and his daughter Emily had set up a modest watch camp. The small fire they'd built earlier now burned low, casting flickering shadows upon Ben's worn face, accentuating the deep lines around his pale blue eyes. Emily watched her father quietly, aware of the tension he carried, the burden he never spoke aloud. She had always admired his quiet strength, yet seeing him now, she noticed vulnerability beneath his stoicism, an unhealed wound still raw. The quiet was abruptly broken by a distant, eerie chorus of howls and yips echoing through the darkness. Ranger's head shot up instantly, muscles tensed, eyes fixed toward the sinister call. Copper awoke, wide-eyed with terror, pressing closer to Ranger's protective warmth. The sounds grew steadily louder, closer, an unmistakable pack of coyotes, emboldened by hunger and darkness. Ranger struggled upright, his aging joints stiff with fatigue. He knew his limitations. Age had robbed him of speed, strength, and endurance, but not determination. He stood defiantly between the approaching danger and the terrified fawn, his fur bristling defensively. Through the shadows emerged the pack leader, a large coyote with sharp features, piercing eyes glowing faintly amber in the weak starlight, cautious yet confident, flanked by 4 smaller packmates, lean and wiry. They moved slowly, cunning predators calculating their odds, circling Ranger and Copper cautiously. Back at the watch camp, Ben's heart quickened, instincts alerting him instantly to the coyote's intent. "Emily," he whispered urgently, rising quickly, grabbing a large branch and lighting it hastily in the embers, creating an improvised torch. Emily scrambled to her feet, tension etched into her features as she grasped her own flashlight tightly. As Ben approached the clearing, the coyotes lunged forward, snarling fiercely. Ranger responded instantly, throwing himself into their path, his growls deep and determined. He bared his teeth fiercely, despite his worn, frail form, forcing the predators back momentarily. One coyote snapped viciously at Ranger's hind leg, making him yelp sharply in pain. The old hound refused to yield, adrenaline temporarily masking his discomfort as he stood again, unwavering. From the shadows emerged Ben, torch blazing fiercely in his grip. He waved the flame furiously, shouting with a deep, commanding voice, "Get out of here! Leave them alone!" His sudden appearance startled the coyotes, who retreated hesitantly, eyes wary but still gleaming with hunger. Emily stepped quickly behind her father, flashlight beam sweeping the clearing aggressively, amplifying their threatening presence. After a tense standoff, the pack finally conceded defeat, retreating silently into the darkness, their frustrated snarls fading into quiet. Breathing heavily, Ranger glanced toward Ben, the firelight casting a warm glow across the old dog's weary face. Their eyes met in silent acknowledgement, 2 aging guardians recognizing a mirrored determination in each other. For a moment, a powerful understanding passed between them. Words unnecessary, bonds forged instantly through mutual respect. Emily moved carefully to Kappa's side, gently checking the frightened deer. She softly stroked his trembling flank, her calm, soothing manner reassuring him. Kappa relaxed slightly, sensing her kind intentions. Ranger watched quietly, reassured by Emily's gentle actions, finally allowing himself to sit down, his tired body trembling slightly from exertion. Ben stood motionless, torch still in hand, his gaze locked thoughtfully upon Ranger. In the flickering firelight, the old Ranger's memories flooded back with painful clarity. Years earlier, during a severe forest fire, Ben and Duke, his loyal companion, had braved thick smoke to evacuate hikers trapped on a mountainside trail. Duke had tirelessly searched for survivors until collapsing from smoke inhalation, never fully recovering. Ben, racked with guilt, blamed himself, haunted by the belief he'd failed his steadfast friend. That incident had driven him away from his ranger duties, isolating himself from everyone, including Emily. Seeing Ranger's courage tonight resonated deeply, rekindling something within Ben's heart. He remembered Duke's unwavering bravery, how the dog had trusted him implicitly, willingly sacrificing himself for others. Watching Ranger defend Copper against impossible odds reminded Ben of the nobility and strength that defined true courage. Tears blurred his vision briefly, a quiet resolve settling firmly within him. Perhaps it was time, he realized, to forgive himself and honor Duke's memory by finding purpose once more. Emily turned quietly toward her father, sensing his emotional turmoil. She approached slowly, placing a reassuring hand upon his arm. "Dad," she whispered softly, understanding evident in her tone. "It wasn't your fault. Duke knew you did everything possible." Ben's jaw tightened, raw emotion evident as he met Emily's compassionate gaze. "I should have been able to save him, Em," he murmured, voice thick with long-held pain. Emily shook her head gently. eyes shining with quiet determination. Sometimes courage isn't about winning or losing, Dad. It's about standing firm, no matter what happens. Ranger knows that. Duke knew it too. Ben nodded slowly, absorbing her wisdom quietly. Turning back toward Ranger, he approached carefully, crouching slowly beside the old dog, torch lowered to avoid startling him. Ranger watched cautiously, muscles briefly tense, before relaxing visibly as Ben's calm, steady presence reassured him. "You're something else, old boy," Ben said softly, reaching out tentatively, gently scratching Ranger behind his ears. Ranger leaned slightly into Ben's touch, trusting despite years of abandonment and neglect. "Thanks for reminding me what it means to be brave." Emily watched silently, heart swelling with hope, witnessing the gentle connection forming between her father and Ranger. She understood this moment was a crucial turning point, one of healing, redemption, and quiet strength. Copper, calmed by Emily's gentle presence, finally lay down again, curled safely near Ranger. Though danger remained ever present in the valley shadows, this unlikely group, two animals and two humans bound together by courage and compassion, stood determined, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the firelight flickered softly beneath the starlit sky, Ben knew he was finally ready to step forward once again, no longer shackled by past failures. His heart, inspired by the quiet bravery of an aging hound, found fresh hope, understanding clearly that true courage meant facing the darkness, both within and without, head-on, without faltering. The soft gold of dawn stretched lazily over Elk Ridge, painting the dew-covered trees in hues of amber and rose. Birds stirred in the branches, breaking the morning silence with tentative songs. Standing on the edge of the forest clearing, Ben Hartwell breathed deeply. Savoring the coolness that lingered in the air, his thoughts waited with quiet contemplation. After the previous night's confrontation with the coyotes, Ben had come to a difficult decision. He would bring Ranger and Copper back to his cabin, offering them shelter and care. Ben knew it wasn't strictly natural, nor perhaps even wise, yet a stubborn protective impulse had gripped him deeply. He felt responsible now, tied to their fragile bond of survival. Behind him, Emily carefully checked the modest campsite they had made, packing supplies into her worn hiking backpack with practiced efficiency. She glanced toward her father occasionally, sensing the quiet burden of his thoughts. Emily had been cautious around Ben since her return. The wounds between them were deep, their relationship tentative but hopeful. Watching him now, the thoughtful look in his eyes, Emily felt encouraged. Perhaps, she thought, this strange journey with Ranger and Copper might finally heal the distance between father and daughter. Ranger rose slowly from the damp grass, limbs stiff and sore from the confrontation. The aging hound still bore minor injuries from the coyote's attack, his hind leg slightly swollen, fur matted where teeth had grazed him, but his spirit remained unyielding. Copper stood shakily nearby, his spindly legs more stable now after rest. Though still weak, the young deer had noticeably improved under Ranger's diligent care, his chestnut coat regaining its healthy luster, his large eyes shining softly with newfound trust. Ben approached slowly, making sure his movements were calm, reassuring. "You're coming home with us," he said softly to Ranger, extending his hand gently. Ranger looked at him with cautious curiosity, then dipped his head slightly, an unmistakable sign of acceptance. Ben smiled faintly, feeling a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. Carefully, he lifted Copper into his arms, the fawn surprisingly calm as he nestled against Ben's chest, recognizing safety in his embrace. The walk back to the cabin was slow, deliberate, the woods around them waking gradually as sunlight filtered through the leaves. Emily walked quietly beside Ben, stealing glances at her father carrying the fawn. Seeing him like this, protective, gentle, reminded her of happier times from childhood, times before the accident had changed him so profoundly. Upon reaching the cabin, Ben laid Copper gently on a thick bed of blankets by the hearth. Ranger immediately took up a watchful position beside him, his alert eyes surveying the unfamiliar surroundings warily. Emily quickly prepared warm food for Ranger and provided fresh water, watching quietly as the hound ate gratefully, restoring his strength. As days turned into a comfortable routine, Ranger and Copper slowly recovered, their bond deepening further. They moved through the small space together, Copper following Ranger everywhere, trusting implicitly in his canine protector. Ranger, despite lingering aches, seemed younger, energized by the company and responsibility. Ben watched their friendship grow with quiet amazement, understanding profoundly that nature could transcend even instinctual boundaries. One morning, a new visitor arrived at the cabin, breaking their peaceful rhythm. Evan Mitchell, a young ranger from the Elk Ridge Wildlife Conservation Center, knocked hesitantly at the cabin door. Evan was tall and slim, in his late 20s, with sandy blonde hair that spilled messily from beneath his official green cap. His youthful face was earnest, expressive brown eyes revealing a sensitive nature. He greeted Ben politely, nodding respectfully toward Emily. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Hartwell." Evan began cautiously, looking past Ben toward Copper lying near Ranger. "We've received reports about a fawn being kept here. I'm afraid regulations require that we transfer him to our Wildlife Rehabilitation Center." Ben's heart tightened instantly, anxiety gripping him. "Coppa's safe here," he responded firmly, voice edged slightly with defensiveness. "Ranger's been caring for him. Removing him now would break something special between them." Evan shifted uncomfortably, clearly sympathetic. "I understand, sir, but protocols exist for a reason. Copper needs to be around other deer to learn survival skills. It's what's best for his future." Ben sighed, understanding logically but resisting emotionally. Emily stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on her father's arm. "Dad, maybe Evan has a point. Copper might need more than we can provide here." Ben shook his head stubbornly. "They save each other, Em. We can't break them apart." Evan hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the tense atmosphere. "I'll give you some time to think about it, but the center will expect an answer soon," he said softly, retreating toward his parked truck. As Evan's vehicle disappeared down the dirt road, Ben sank heavily onto the porch steps, his shoulders slumped. Emily sat beside him quietly, giving him space to wrestle with his conflicted emotions. After a long silence, Ben finally spoke, voice subdued. "I'll ask you once, Emily. I push you away because I blame myself. Seeing Ranger and Copper together, it's reminded me how precious connections can be." Emily's eyes softened, her voice quiet but firm. "Dad, I'm here now. We can't change the past, but we can decide what happens next. Whatever choice we make, we'll do it together." That night, unable to sleep, Ben sat at his cluttered writing desk, pen hovering uncertainly above blank paper. The quiet crackle of the hearth fire provided a gentle backdrop. Finally, his hand moved, words spilling slowly onto the page. A letter to Emily, honest and heartfelt, seeking forgiveness, clarity, reconciliation. He wrote carefully about his regret, about Duke, about the years of isolation he'd imposed upon himself, and his desperate hope to rebuild what had been lost. Across the room, Ranger lifted his head slightly, ears pricking at the soft scratching of pen against paper. The old dog seemed to understand the quiet significance of this moment, settling contentedly near Copper, who slept peacefully beside him. The letter finished, Ben folded it carefully, setting it gently aside. He glanced at Ranger, the hound's wise eyes meeting his own. "You've shown me courage," Ben murmured softly. "Maybe it's time I showed some myself." Outside, the moon cast its silver glow across Elk Ridge, the forest resting beneath a calm sky. Despite the looming decision about Copper, an unexpected peace had settled quietly within Ben's heart. For the first time in years, he felt hopeful, a fragile yet resilient belief that the path ahead, however uncertain, could be faced with courage, compassion, and above all, togetherness. Days in Elk Ridge passed quietly, their rhythm marked by early mornings wrapped in mist and gentle evenings bathed in sunset gold. Within the warmth of Ben Hartwell's modest cabin, life moved at a subdued, careful pace, as though each inhabitant understood the fragility of the peace they now shared. Ranger, whose sturdy frame had once been a picture of unwavering strength, began to show clear signs of decline. Age had settled deep into his bones, and the long journey he'd undertaken, both emotionally and physically, had taken its inevitable toll. His hind legs trembled slightly when he walked, and his appetite waned, even as Emily patiently coaxed him with nutritious meals and tender words. Copper sensed Ranger's condition immediately, his large brown eyes shadowed with anxious confusion. The young fawn, now stronger yet still dependent on Ranger's guidance, withdrew into quiet melancholy, rarely venturing far from his companion's side. He ate less, moved slowly, and seemed burdened by an invisible sorrow. Their bond, which had blossomed so beautifully, now tethered them together in shared vulnerability. Ben observed their quiet struggle, his heart aching profoundly. Witnessing the depths of loyalty and compassion between these two animals awakened something fierce and protective within him. He resolved silently that he would do everything possible to preserve their bond, determined not to let anyone, man or nature, tear them apart. As promised, Evan Mitchell returned from the Wildlife Conservation Center early one crisp morning, driving his official green pickup truck carefully along the narrow dirt road. Ben watched him approach from the porch, anxiety coiling in his chest like a cold serpent. Evan stepped from his vehicle slowly, respectfully removing his cap, sandy blonde hair tousled beneath it. His earnest, youthful eyes met Ben's cautious gaze, conveying sympathy mixed with professional duty. "Good morning, Mr. Hartwell," Evan said gently, nodding politely. "The committee met yesterday to discuss Kappa's situation. They're very insistent. It's protocol to transfer orphaned wildlife for rehabilitation. They believe separating him now gives him the best chance for a natural life." Ben's jaw tightened subtly, his voice steady yet edged with emotion. "Evan, separating them would do more harm than good. Ranger's health is failing, and Copper relies on him. They formed something extraordinary together. Removing Copper would break them both." Evan sighed, clearly conflicted. "Believe me, sir, I wish there was another option. But rules are clear. I have to report back today with your decision." Inside the cabin, Emily stood quietly near the window, overhearing their conversation. Her heart twisted painfully, torn between sympathy for her father's stance and understanding the center's logic. She knew Ben's heart was already heavy with worry over Ranger's health, his emotional reserves strained thin. Before Evan could continue, the silence was disrupted by a vehicle pulling sharply into the drive. The unexpected visitor, a woman in her early 50s, with vibrant chestnut curls streaked subtly by silver, stepped briskly from her faded blue sedan. Mary Foster was known throughout Elk Ridge as the local veterinarian, respected for her compassionate professionalism and assertive personality. Slender yet sturdy, she radiated authority softened by genuine warmth. Her green eyes sparkled with urgency as she approached Ben quickly. "Ben," Mary called gently, offering Evan a polite nod before turning back to her friend. "Emily called me earlier. She's worried about Ranger. Can I take a look at him?" Ben nodded gratefully, leading Mary inside. Ranger lay quietly by the hearth, breathing shallowly. Mary knelt softly beside the aging dog, her practiced hands gentle yet purposeful as she examined him thoroughly. Her expression remained thoughtful, eyes filled with compassionate concern. "His body is simply worn out," Mary finally said softly, meeting Ben's worried gaze directly. "He's exhausted. He needs rest, warmth, fluids, and most importantly, care and companionship. Kappa's presence is probably the best medicine he has right now." Ben turned toward Evan, a quiet yet resolute plea evident in his eyes. Evan hesitated, clearly moved by the veterinarian's assessment. Finally, he sighed softly, nodding reluctantly. "I'll talk to the committee again," Evan conceded gently. Mary's recommendation will hold weight. Mary offered a reassuring smile, gently patting Ranger's side. I'll advocate strongly. You have my word. Later that evening, Ben sat alone on the cabin porch, deep in thought beneath the gathering dusk. The distant hills faded gradually into darkness, the tranquility of night settling around him. Lost in reflection, he was startled when the headlights of another approaching vehicle illuminated the driveway. Emily emerged slowly from her car, her auburn hair catching moonlight softly, expression carefully neutral. She hesitated momentarily before walking toward her father, holding a folded paper gently between her fingers. Ben stood silently, uncertainty swirling between them. Emily finally spoke quietly, voice gentle. I read your letter, Dad. She began softly, green eyes shimmering with unshed tears. It meant more to me than you know. Ben's throat tightened with emotion. I meant every word, he replied sincerely. I wasted too much time because I was afraid of losing you, afraid of failing you again. Emily stepped forward, wrapping her arms gently around her father's shoulders. I'm here now, Dad. No more running from the past. We'll face everything together. They stood quietly embracing beneath the soft glow of the porch lamp, the years of hurt slowly dissolving in that moment of profound reconciliation. As days passed, Emily's presence brought renewed energy and warmth into the cabin. Together, father and daughter carefully tended to Ranger and Copper, their collective care steadily improving the animals' conditions. Ranger gradually regained strength, responding slowly but surely to Mary Foster's careful medical guidance and Emily's patient nurturing. Copper, sensing Ranger's slight improvement, mirrored the recovery himself, his own spirits rising notably. One afternoon, Evan returned with cautious optimism. He approached Ben and Emily with a gentle smile, relaying the committee's revised decision after considering Mary's expert opinion. They've agreed Copper can remain here temporarily under observation, Evan announced gently. If both continue to improve, they'll reevaluate. But for now, the bond you've shown us matters deeply. Ben's heart swelled with relief, gratitude shining plainly in his pale blue eyes. Emily squeezed his hand reassuringly, joy lighting her face. Thank you, Evan, she said warmly. Evan nodded, smiling slightly. You show me something special here. I had to fight for it. As twilight once again settled peacefully over Elk Ridge, Ben sat quietly beside Ranger and Copper, who lay curled contentedly together by the warmth of the cabin fire. Emily joined her father, sharing the quiet moment. We came close to losing everything, Ben murmured softly, reflecting aloud. But I realize now, we can't control everything. All we can do is fight for the ones we love. Emily smiled softly, nodding in quiet agreement. Outside, the night whispered gently through the trees, a promise of resilience and renewal drifting softly through Elk Ridge. Together, father and daughter, man and animals, faced the future bravely, strengthened profoundly by bonds of loyalty, compassion, and hope. Autumn arrived in Elk Ridge softly, painting the valley in brilliant hues of amber, gold, and deep crimson. The crisp air carried the familiar fragrance of damp leaves and wood smoke, bringing a comforting sense of renewal to the community. At Ben Hartwell's cabin, the small porch was decorated with pumpkins and bundles of dried corn stalks, embracing the gentle warmth of the harvest season. The cabin itself had become a lively place, filled with renewed laughter and quiet conversations, as Ben and his daughter Emily spent more days working closely together than apart. In the grassy meadow beside the cabin, Ranger lay quietly, resting beneath the gentle afternoon sun. Though his age and recent illness had slowed his pace, careful nursing from Emily and veterinary care from Mary Foster had given him a new lease on life. The grizzled old hound's eyes were bright and alert again, his dark coat regaining its healthy shine. Close beside him grazed Copper, no longer the frail, frightened fawn, but a strong young deer, his slender legs steady and confident, his chestnut fur thickening beautifully for the coming winter. Yet, despite his newfound vigor, Copper rarely strayed far from Ranger's protective gaze, their bond as unshakable as ever. Word of Ranger and Coppa's extraordinary friendship had spread quickly throughout Elk Ridge, capturing the imagination and hearts of its residents. The townsfolk, touched deeply by their unlikely bond, often stopped by the cabin to offer help or simply to marvel at the gentle companionship between two creatures nature had destined as predator and prey. One frequent visitor was Clara Bennett, a woman in her early 60s whose quiet but determined presence had long made her a respected figure in town. Clara was tall and thin, with silver-streaked hair pulled back neatly into a practical bun, framing a sharp but kind face that had weathered life's trials gracefully. As the town's unofficial historian and community organizer, Clara saw potential in the touching story of Ranger and Copper to inspire broader change within Elk Ridge. One bright morning, Clara knocked gently on the cabin's front door. Ben answered, surprised but warmly welcoming her inside. Clara removed her knitted shawl carefully, her clear blue eyes bright with purpose. "Ben," she began calmly, smiling warmly at Emily who appeared from the kitchen, "the town's been talking about Ranger and Copper. Their story has touched everyone's hearts. People want to do something meaningful." Ben glanced curiously at Emily, then back at Clara. "What did you have in mind?" Clara's eyes twinkled. "We want to establish a small wildlife sanctuary here in Elk Ridge, a protected natural area for animals needing special care. Ranger and Copper inspired us. The town council has already agreed. We only need your support and guidance." Ben stood speechless, deeply moved. Emily stepped forward, her face lit with enthusiasm. "Clara, that's wonderful. Dad and I have talked about something similar. A center for education, a place where we can teach compassion, respect for wildlife, and conservation." Clara nodded approvingly. "Exactly. Elk Ridge is changing, Ben. The younger generation, like young Evan Mitchell, needs guidance. What better way than by showing firsthand what friendship and compassion truly mean?" Ben's throat tightened with quiet emotion. "I couldn't agree more," he finally managed softly, feeling pride and humility simultaneously. He had once isolated himself from this very community, but now felt warmly embraced, part of something larger than himself. Within weeks, Elk Ridge buzzed with activity. Townsfolk eagerly volunteered their time and skills to transform the area around Ben's cabin into a vibrant wildlife sanctuary. Workers arrived daily. Carpenters like Tom Willis, a jovial man in his mid-50s with broad shoulders and a ready laugh, and landscapers including young Lisa Carson, cheerful and energetic, her curly red hair bouncing beneath a colorful headband. The sanctuary took shape rapidly, featuring safe, fenced areas, gentle walking trails, and a spacious barn repurposed into an educational center. Throughout the project, Ranger and Copper remained at the heart of everything, quietly watching the progress each day, a symbol of unity and perseverance. Emily took charge of designing the educational programs, crafting lessons that emphasized understanding and compassion. Her passion inspired many locals, including young families, who eagerly awaited the sanctuary's opening. On a crisp November afternoon, the sanctuary officially opened. Families and visitors gathered beneath clear blue skies, excitement palpable. Mayor Susan Whitaker, a slender woman with dark brown hair and warm hazel eyes, known for her heartfelt speeches, officially dedicated the Elk Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary to the town, citing Ranger and Copper as living proof that compassion could overcome even the most improbable boundaries. At the ceremony, Evan Mitchell stood proudly alongside Mary Foster and Clara Bennett, representing the local conservation and animal care community. Evan smiled shyly toward Emily, gratitude clear his eyes. Their shared effort had formed a friendship built upon mutual respect and compassion. Ben, standing quietly beside Ranger, spoke briefly to the gathered crowd. "I lost faith in myself years ago," he admitted sincerely, voice thick with emotion. "I isolated myself, not realizing how deeply we all need each other. Watching Ranger and Copper showed me courage isn't just bravery. It's opening your heart to trust again, to forgive, to care deeply. They healed something in me, something I thought permanently broken. Applause rang out warmly as Ben stepped back, tears in his eyes. Emily embraced him gently, pride radiating from her. In that moment, the wounds between father and daughter felt fully healed, replaced by mutual respect, understanding, and love. Over time, the sanctuary thrived, becoming a treasured part of Elk Ridge. Visitors flocked to see Ranger and Copper, whose friendship endured through every passing season. Ranger's health stabilized under Mary Foster's watchful care, allowing him gentle days of companionship and rest. Copper grew strong and joyful, a young buck filled with playful spirit, yet forever bonded to the aging hound. Together, father and daughter guided the sanctuary into a beacon of hope and education. Ben taught visitors and local children about respecting nature, often sharing quiet anecdotes from his ranger days. Emily focused on rehabilitation, gently caring for orphaned wildlife, inspired daily by the bond between Ranger and Copper. One afternoon, Ben and Emily stood side by side on the cabin porch, watching Ranger nap contentedly in the sun, Copper grazing quietly nearby. "We created something special here," Ben murmured softly. Emily smiled warmly, squeezing her father's hand. "We didn't create it, Dad. We found it. And we protected it, just like Ranger and Copper protect each other." Ben nodded thoughtfully, recognizing the truth in her words. Their true home had always been here in Elk Ridge. Not simply a place, but a profound sense of connection, belonging, and purpose shared by all living things. As daylight slowly faded into a golden dusk, Elk Ridge settled peacefully beneath the quiet promise of stars emerging overhead. Ranger awoke briefly, eyes meeting Coppa's gently before returning to rest, secure in their enduring friendship. From now on, their lives, and those of everyone in Elk Ridge, would always reflect the beauty and strength found in compassion, loyalty, and unity. In life, we often find strength and compassion in the most unexpected places. Just as Ranger and Copper showed us, love and friendship can flourish even where we least expect them, bridging divides and healing old wounds. Remember, kindness and compassion can change lives, including your own. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need inspiration today. Don't forget to comment amen below and subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope and courage. May God bless you all with peace, love, and lasting friendships.